when former Browns EO publicly called out Kevin Stefanski for jealousy towards Shedeur. It wasn't just another NFL rumor. It was an indictment of an organization that's been quietly sabotaging itself. Behind closed doors, key players like Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco were traded away while whispers of deliberate tanking grew louder.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The CEO's claims of political motives and ego-driven decisions painted a picture of dysfunction, so deep it could swallow the franchise whole. Instead of empowering a young quarterback with elite instincts and NFL pedigree, leadership seems intent on keeping him sidelined, afraid that his rise could expose their own insecurities. What's at stake now isn't just one player's career, but the credibility of the entire Browns organization. The constant manipulation of playing time, the restricted media access, and the silence from the coaching staff all feed into a culture built on fear and self-preservation. If the organization doesn't change course, embracing honesty, accountability, and Sanders' undeniable potential, it risks losing everything. The locker room, the fans, and the very identity of the franchise itself. The Cleveland Browns are no strangers to dysfunction, but this is on another level. A former CEO just detonated a truth bomb that's now echoing through every hallway of the Browns facility. And at the center of it all, Kevin Stefanski and rising star quarterback Shedeur. Let's not sugarcoat anything. This is messy. According to this former insider, the Browns aren't just mismanaging their quarterback situation. They're tanking, deliberately, strategically, trading away key players like Amari Cooper and even Joe Flacco, yes, to division rivals, to secure better draft positioning. You'd think they were rebuilding from scratch, but instead, they're hiding behind ego and office politics while pretending this is all part of some master plan. Now, the spotlight shifts to Shedeur. He's not just a top talent. He's a future. NFL pedigree, elite football IQ, and charisma that draws headlines every time he walks into a room. So why is he barely in the conversation inside the Browns' own building? The answer, according to this former CEO, is jealousy. And not just from other players. From head coach Kevin Stefanski himself. Yep, the same Kevin Stefanski who won Coach of the Year just a few seasons ago is now allegedly orchestrating a campaign of silence and avoidance when it comes to Shedeur, not naming him in interviews, restricting media footage, keeping him away from the spotlight. The report paints a picture of a coach terrified of being overshadowed by a young quarterback who hasn't even taken a regular season snap. That's not just insecurity. That's sabotage. Let's pause here, because this goes deeper than just one quarterback controversy. This is a full-blown culture problem. According to this former CEO, the Browns aren't just making bad calls. They're building their entire strategy around fear, pride, and self-preservation. The kind of toxic mix that destroys locker rooms and ruins careers. And it's not just Shedeur being sidelined. The team threw Dylan Gabriel into a brutal situation behind the offensive line that everyone knew was falling apart. No protection, no plan, just a warm body to stand behind center and take the hits. It's a setup. Meanwhile, Shedeur, arguably the most promising QB in the building, is benched, iced out, and essentially being erased from the script. Why? Because letting Shedeur shine would expose the leadership failures. It would highlight just how broken the current regime is. Let's not forget how calculated this all is. Media access has been tight. Reporters have been kept at a distance. Clips of Shedeur are hard come by. And when they do leak, it's clear he has the poise, mechanics, and leadership you want in your franchise quarterback. So why hide him? Because the minute the public sees what he's capable of, the pressure play him skyrockets. And that puts Stefanski and the front office in a corner. They can't keep up the illusion that they're doing what's best for the team when the most obvious choice is sitting on the bench. The Browns are playing chess with draft picks instead of fixing their current issues. Offensive linemen are ignored in the draft, even with looming holes in the trenches. Instead, they're hoarding future assets like it's a fantasy league. Meanwhile, the current roster is full of mismatched pieces, underdeveloped talent, and a coaching staff that looks more like a boardroom than a locker room. You got a franchise that's paralyzed by fear. Fear of change. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing control. And that fear is bleeding into every decision. Instead of leaning into a generational talent like Shedeur, they're trying to control the narrative, delay the inevitable, and hope the pressure doesn't boil over. But it is boiling over. Fans are watching. The media is catching on. The locker room? It can't be immune to this kind of dysfunction. Players talk. They see the favoritism. They see who's getting protected and who's getting thrown to the wolves. That kills morale. The Browns' leadership seems more invested in covering their tracks than course-correcting. And the former CEO didn't just call out the behavior. He warned that this exact approach is unsustainable. That unless the organization embraces transparency and humility, this whole thing is going to collapse. Not just a bad season. Collapse. Because when a franchise buries its best chance at success out of pride or fear, it's only a matter of time before the fans walk. The players give up, and the front office starts turning over like a revolving door. This isn't just about one game or one season. This is about the Browns being handed a potential franchise savior and choosing to let him sit in silence while they implode from the inside out. The XEO's revelations make one thing clear. The Browns aren't building a future. They're stalling one. Shedeur's talent? It's not just potential. It's inevitable. You can delay it. You can hide it. But at some point it bursts through. And when it does, it exposes every crack in the foundation. And what happens then? What happens if Shedeur goes somewhere else and thrives while Cleveland is still stuck playing quarterback roulette? What happens if the Jets' game turns into another disaster and the calls to start Shedeur hit a fever pitch? Segment, CBM Browns versus New York Jets. Recent match game photos. This weekend isn't just a game. It's a test. A test of leadership. A test of vision. And a test of whether the Browns are finally ready to face the truth. That the problem isn't media attention, draft picks, or quarterback hype. It's them. And unless they get out of their own way, the Browns are going to watch their best shot at a real future walk right out the door. You've got a coach dodging questions, a front office ducking accountability, and a quarterback everyone's talking about, except the people who actually run the team. Eventually, that pressure breaks something. The only question left is whether the Browns have the self-awareness to fix it before it's too late. If you've been watching the situation unfold, you already know it's not just a football story. It's an ego story, a leadership story, a reminder that in the NFL, talent isn't always enough. Sometimes, the biggest challenge isn't your opponent on the field. It's the people in your own building. And when you've got a quarterback like Shedeur, Sanders waiting in the wings, every excuse starts to sound a lot like fear. Let me know in the comments. Do you think the Browns are tanking on purpose, or is this just another chapter in their long history of dysfunction? Should Shedeur be starting now, or are they actually playing the long game? And how do you think this all ends if Stefanski doesn't change course? Don't forget to like the video if you're tired of watching teams waste generational talent. And subscribe if you want to keep getting the real story behind the chaos. This is only the beginning. Let's be real. If you follow the Cleveland Browns for even 5 minutes, none of this should surprise you. This is a franchise that's made dysfunction an art form. But what's happening right now? It's not just dysfunction. It's sabotage. Internal. Deliberate. Calculated. You got a front office so obsessed with managing optics that they're willing to sideline their most promising asset out of fear he might make them look bad? That's not strategy. That's cowardice. And it's being called out loudly by someone who used to sit at the top of the food chain. Segment. KS and Shedeur Sanders, this XO didn't just burn bridges. He torched the whole freeway. He laid bare what many fans have suspected for months. The team isn't being run like a football operation. It's being run like a PR firm that's constantly in damage control mode. And the players? They're pawns in a larger, more insecure game. Let's talk about why Stefanski might be so hesitant to unleash Shedeur Sanders. It's not because he's not ready. No one's saying Shedeur is perfect, but his talent is undeniable. Confidence, poise, leadership. He's got all the intangibles. And that's what makes this so damning. Stefanski knows Shedeur's star is rising. He knows the media is hungry for it. And apparently, that's exactly the problem. It's hard to stay the center of attention when the guy behind you is glowing like a supernova. According to the former CEO, Stefanski's been tiptoeing around Sanders for a reason: jealousy. Not the kind you see on reality TV, but the professional kind that seeps in when someone else starts to threaten your spotlight. And when a quarterback with Shedeur's pedigree walks in the building, people start asking questions. Tough ones. Like, why isn't he starting? Why is this team still struggling while he's holding a clipboard? Why are we protecting a status quo that clearly isn't working? And that's when the silence starts. No press clips. No practice footage. No quotes from the coach. Just nothing. It's not just bizarre, it's intentional. The Browns are treating Shedeur Sanders like a PR liability when he should be treated like a generational solution. He's not the problem. He's the person that makes the problems harder to ignore. And let's be honest, the whole draft picks over development strategy, it's weak. It's a kind of long-term thinking that only works if your present isn't on fire. But in Cleveland, the smoke is already rising. You don't let your offensive line collapse while passing on linemen in the draft unless you're planning something. And not something smart. Something desperate, like tanking. Like trying to trade up for a unicorn draft pick instead of fixing what's broken right now. It's a shell game. Distract the fans with promise while you stall out on execution. Dylan Gabriel being thrown to the Wolves was a canary in the coal mine. A quarterback with limited tools, behind a broken line, set up to fail while Shedeur rides a bench. You think that's a coincidence? It's a tactic. It's a sacrifice. And it's wasting time. That kind of internal politicking doesn't just ruin seasons. It ruins careers. Players see what's happening. You think they don't know who the best quarterback in the room is? They know. And every snap Gabriel took while running for his life sent message. Not just about performance, but about priorities. This isn't a meritocracy. It's a loyalty test. And nothing destroys trust faster than rewarding loyalty over talent. Meanwhile, fans are sitting at home watching the circus and asking the obvious, when is Shedeur going to play? Not just for curiosity's sake, but because they know the Browns have something special, and it's being locked away like a secret recipe. Here's what's wild. This isn't just about football anymore. The story around Shedeur Sanders has taken on a life of its own. The media wants him. The fans want him. And the organization? They're treating him like a threat. Let that sink in. You've got a player who could change the trajectory of the franchise, and the leadership is afraid to let him speak, to be seen, to exist in the spotlight. Because the minute he does, all the smoke and mirrors disappear. You can't hide behind development forever when your starter is getting pancaked every drive. You can't keep pushing the future strategy narrative when the present is this broken. Eventually, the questions become demands, and the demands become pressure. And that pressure? It either breaks you or exposes you. That's the crossroads the Browns are standing at right now. The Jets game is more than just a matchup. It's a breaking point. Because if things go south, again, the calls to start Shedeur won't be whispers anymore. They'll be deafening. And the Browns' leadership will have no more room to hide behind readiness or timing or whatever vague excuse they cooked up this week. They'll have to make a choice. Double down on dysfunction or let the kid play. And you know what? If they wait too long, the decision might not even be theirs to make. Because quarterbacks with star power, media heat, and NFL bloodlines don't just sit quietly forever. Other teams see the writing on the wall. Other agents take the calls. If Cleveland keeps stalling, they could lose Shedeur before he ever even starts. This isn't a drill. It's not a rebuild. It's a meltdown in slow motion. Leadership is afraid to lead. Coaching is afraid to coach. And the franchise is so obsessed with control that it's strangling the very thing that could save it. The former CEO saw this coming, and he didn't mince words. He said what no one in the building will say out loud. Unless the Browns take a long, hard look at themselves, unless they stop operating from fear and pride and start leaning into the truth, they're going to lose. Not just games, but people, trust, respect, players, everything. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a name. He's the mirror. The moment he steps onto that field, everyone sees exactly who's been holding the team back. And that might not be the guy under center. It might be the one with the headset on the sidelines. So what's next? That depends on whether the Browns want to keep pretending everything's fine, or they're finally ready to get out of their own way. Because here's the truth no one in Berea wants to admit. Shedeur's time is coming whether they like it or not. The only question is whether it happens in Cleveland or somewhere else. And when it does, the receipts from this era, every restricted practice clip, every silence presser, every wasted drive, are going to look real bad in hindsight. Let's not pretend this is just another front office disagreement. What we're witnessing with the Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders is a slow-motion implosion of trust. This isn't just miscommunication. This is fear, ego, and insecurity stitched into the very fabric of how this team is operating. And at the center of it, Kevin Stefanski, who at one point was seen as a breath of fresh air for the franchise, is now coming off like a coach cornered by his own shadow. Let's break it down. You don't accidentally alienate a high-profile quarterback prospect. You don't accidentally keep his name out of press conferences. You don't accidentally restrict media footage. These aren't oversights. They're intentional, and they reek of something much deeper than strategy. Control. Shedeur Sanders represents everything this version of the Browns isn't. Bold, attention-grabbing, confident, and, most of all, capable. When a player like that walks into the building, you either build around him or you bury him. And right now, it looks like they're doing the latter. Why? Because he doesn't fit into the tightly controlled image Stefanski wants. Shedeur draws attention without trying. He doesn't shrink in front of cameras. And most importantly, he's a quarterback who knows his value. That threatens people, especially people who are already feeling the walls close in. You think the CEO who came forward did this for fun? No. He saw the dysfunction from the inside. He saw decisions that weren't about football. They were about optics, about internal hierarchies, about keeping certain egos protected. He saw a franchise afraid of its own potential. And that fear is radiating through everything they do. From a bizarre quarterback handling to the trades that make no football sense. This isn't a rebuild, it's a retreat. The Browns are retreating into a safer version of themselves, one where no one asks hard questions and no one disrupts the status quo. But Shedeur Sanders is a disruption. He forces a conversation they don't want to have. Because once he takes that field, there's no more hiding behind bad draft choices or system quarterbacks or the excuse of development. If he plays well, and all signs say he will, it's game over for the current regime's narrative. They'd have to admit they stalled, that they put politics over performance, that they wasted time, reps, and possibly an entire season protect egos instead of building a future. And that might be the scariest thing of all for this front office. Segment, AC game photos. Let's go back to trades for a second. Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco sent to division rivals. That's not just throwing in the towel. That's arming your enemies. You don't do that unless you've already checked out of the current season. You don't do that unless you're chasing a draft pick like a gambler doubling down after a losing hand. That's the level of dysfunction we're dealing with. Strategic failure is passed off as long-term vision. Meanwhile, Shedeur's stuck on the bench, watching it all happen, probably wondering what exactly he walked into. And here's the thing. Players like Shedeur don't stay quiet forever. They watch. They learn. But they don't wait forever. Especially when they know their talent is being suppressed, not because they're not ready, but because someone else isn't ready for them. The media blackout, the silent treatment from Stefanski, that's not about keeping pressure off the rookie. That's about keeping pressure off himself. And if we're being brutally honest, this all feels familiar. This is what it looks like when a franchise has no clear identity. When fear of being wrong matters more than being great. When development becomes code for delay. And delay becomes the excuse for dysfunction. Meanwhile, the locker room suffers. Leadership suffers. Trust erodes. Because if players see that talent is being punished, not rewarded, then why buy in? Why give 100% when the decisions being made aren't about football, but about optics? You can't build a winning culture on fear. You can't build trust on silence. And you definitely can't bench your best future asset just because someone in the coaching staff feels insecure. That's not leadership. That's mismanagement on a grand scale. And while the Browns continue playing this high-stakes game of delay and deny, Shedeur's fan base keeps growing. National outlets are watching. Fans are calling it out. Even casual viewers know something weird is going on in Cleveland. At this point, Stefanski's silence isn't neutral, it's an answer. And that answer is telling everyone that Shedeur Sanders threatens the hierarchy. That's the worst kind of signal you can send in a league that thrives on adaptability. Because while other teams are embracing young talent, leaning into their future, and making bold moves, Cleveland's playing small, conservative, defensive, segment, DG NFL match photos, and it's not working. Let's not forget, the offensive line has been a known issue. That's not hindsight, that's documented. So when a team skips over offensive linemen in the draft to stockpile picks for the next year, it's not just short-sighted, it's self-sabotage. They're setting up players to fail. Players like Dylan Gabriel, who never had a shot. And in doing so, they're reinforcing the cycle. See? He couldn't do it either. But you didn't set him up to succeed. You just needed a placeholder while you stalled the real decision. But time's up. The Jets' game is looming, and let's be honest, this isn't just about winning or losing anymore. It's about clarity. It's about whether the Browns are finally going to stop playing scared and start making decisions that reflect a desire to win, not just survive. And if they don't, then don't be surprised when Shedeur shines somewhere else. Because a player like that doesn't just disappear. He doesn't fade into obscurity. He gets noticed. He gets offers. And eventually, he gets out. And if that happens, the Browns won't just lose a game. They'll lose the narrative, the moral high ground, the locker room, maybe even the fan base. Because you can sell hope. You can sell patience. But you can't sell fear. Not forever. Eventually, people see through it. Eventually, the product on the field tells the truth. So the Browns can keep clinging to control. They can keep pretending it's about timing and development and protecting the rookie. But everyone else, we see the pattern. We see the politics. And we're calling it what it is. Jealousy, insecurity, mismanagement. And if things don't change soon, the Browns won't just be dealing with an angry fan base. They'll be dealing with the consequences of wasting a franchise-changing player. So what do you think? Is this just another case of a team getting in its own way? Or is it something worse? Are the Browns afraid to let Shedeur lead? Or are they just too proud to admit they've made the wrong choices? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is bigger than just Cleveland. It's about what happens when talent meets fear, and what gets lost when leadership forgets who it's supposed to serve. If you're as fired up about this as we are, hit that like button. Share this with your fellow football fans, and don't forget to subscribe. There's more chaos coming, and you'll want to be here when it breaks.